The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the individual co-host and do not reflect the official policy or position of the Firearms Radio Network and or their employers. Viewer discretion is advised. This is especially true on our live shows.
Broadcast for shooters, hunters, and gun enthusiasts. This is the Firearms Radio Network. The bandwidth for this episode of This Week in Guns is sponsored by Patriot Patch Company. PatriotPatch.co.
Welcome to This Week in Guns. This show is brought to you by the Firearms Radio Network and Patriot Patch Company.
And the show offers commentary on the latest firearms industry news, information, and buzz. I'm your host, Sean Heron, and it's so good to be back. I know we missed a few episodes, but sometimes life gets in the way. And we're back, and we're happy, and we're stoked, and I've got some cool stuff to tell you about. And I'm also very excited to talk to our panelists tonight. First up, we have returning veteran Second Amendment advocate, professional rabble-rouser, and author of American Insurgent, also host of the Matter of Facts podcast, Phil Rabelais. How's it going, man?
It's going well, Sean. Thanks for having me back, man.
Glad to have you, as always. And also returning, I believe, I think he's been on here before. We've got a national Second Amendment advocate, founder of the 2013 Colorado Recall Movement, grassroots example, past NRA board director, firearms instructor, co-host of the To the Republic podcast. And he says, I need a drink. It's my friend and yours, Tim Knight. What's up, buddy?
Just hanging in there, Sean. Looking forward to seeing you and super excited to be here tonight. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Guys, I want to get right into it. Before we do, go check out Patriot Patch Company, patriotpatch.co, and also Second Call Defense, firearmsradio.tv/SCD is where you can find out more information about both of those. Let's get into it. I recorded the Civilian Medical podcast today with Skinny Medic, and that's why I'm going to talk about this first story. Cop tourniquets his leg and rescues hostage after being shot. Thought this was a pretty cool when it comes to us from Blue Lives Matter. And basically, guy takes a hostage. Officers go in to a domestic dispute. Guy starts shooting at the officers. He gets hit in the leg, applies a tourniquet. They go back in. They rescue the hostage. It turns into a standoff. And eventually at 3:30 in the morning, they take him into custody. Just talked to Phil about tourniquets just a second ago. And tourniquets are a fantastic thing, right? Like CPR saves people, but people bleed to death every single day in this country, and tourniquets are important to have on your person at all times, or at least nearby where you can just quickly grab one. Phil, I'm going to start with you. I think it's a great story. What about you?
I'm excited about it for a lot of reasons. I mean, there's a lot right about a cop that has, first of all, the will to fight through an injury, strap a tourniquet onto himself, and then go back and complete the mission. I'm all about that. I want to take a second to point out, like, there's been a lot of change in the convention around tourniquets in the last probably 10 years. Like when I first enlisted, the rule was tourniquets a last resort. You want to try like 10,000 different things before you strap one on. And now we're seeing pretty much what this cop is at. He got hit in the leg, didn't know if he hit his femoral artery or not, didn't care. Put the tourniquet on, stop the blood flow, get back in the fight. So I think that's like a great little brief takeaway from this, is that if you get hit in an extremity and you think there's a better than high likelihood that you got hit in an artery, quit screwing around, go straight to the tourniquet, strap it on and leave it on.
Agreed. Tim,
professionals decide if it should be there or not.
Yeah, absolutely. They can take it off if they want to. Tim, I think you probably have a tourniquet on you right now. What do you think?
I used a Velcro. I just took this off my ankle. I keep one, wrong way in the camera. Yeah, I keep one on me because I don't ever want to be in a situation that. As a matter of fact, I'm going to try and avoid that. But keeping one handy and knowing how to use it is super key. And that cop did a great job doing it. Kudos to him. I mean, he wins because he gets to go home because he put it on. His training was just get it on, like Phil said, and then let somebody else determine that it doesn't need to be there. That's awesome. I hope more officers do that.
Yeah,
carry more than one. I mean, as you're an officer, honestly, having one on you on your ankle, as a civilian, people go, "Are you wearing an ankle bracelet?" I'm like, "No, that's my tourniquet." Having more around, especially if you're in the line of duty or you're going overseas or whatnot. I mean, have the folks send you extras, because you never know if you may need them. Got 4 limbs.
Yeah, 100% agree. It is good. There's another video where they're on a street and a officer takes a hit to the leg, and his partner, while the officer is still gun on perpetrator, suspect, whatever terminology you want to use, his partner puts the tourniquet on, that cop. He was jacked up on the adrenaline and everything else that was coursing through his system. Didn't want to quit, even at the end, even after the suspect was down and dead. He was still out there kind of working for it. And I think it's just a great story and a great example of be prepared, use tourniquets when necessary, and get back into the fight and advance to the assault. Frivolous lawsuit against AR-15 manufacturers dismissed with prejudice. This one comes to us from AccurateShooter.com. This is federal district court dismisses suit against AR-15 makers. This is the one where the Primus Group versus Smith & Wesson. You may remember this one. Basically, they were trying to sue Smith & Wesson for racketeering, intentional misrepresentation claims, and a clear and present danger of all American lives due to assault weapons. The court found that the plaintiffs had no standing to bring the case against the defendants, and that the decision rightfully asserts that those who purposefully and criminally misuse firearms are the ones who are responsible for those crimes, not the companies who manufacture the firearms. But it also further affirms that activist lawsuits to prompt judicial action are not the proper avenue to establish policy. It was done in such a way that they cannot bring this case back up. And I think that's great. Tim, I'm going to go with you. With prejudice is the term I was looking for, actually. Tim, I'll start with you. What are your thoughts?
This is it says that things like this should go through the legislatures and not the courts. And, these groups that pop up, they couldn't find out a lot about this group that was bringing this, and they had no standing. Look, the judge got this right and shifted what the blame. And look, we don't blame cars for DUIs. We don't do it. So putting the blame right where it belongs to the ne'er-do-wells and evildoers and criminals, yeah, I'm going to stick with that. The judge nailed this. And, thankfully, we have level-headed people who understand that we got to, using terminology, and people get mad at me when I say, we shouldn't talk about gun violence. Well, why not? Because it's not, the gun didn't do it. So this, having these conversations and letting people know that thought process, we need to tell these stories more.
Yep, 100%. And to be clear, with prejudice means the case is done, cannot be brought back to court ever for any reason, at least in the specifics of this case between the parties and all that good stuff. Phil, what do you think?
Yeah, my only frustration with a situation like this, and it's kind of the same one you and I have talked about whenever a group of citizens has to drag their politicians and their legislature all the way to an appeals court to get something overturned. I don't like the idea that Smith & Wesson had to use their own funds, their own lawyers, their own time, their own whatever to defend themselves in the first place. Like that's the only thing I see is missing from this is I'm glad that the case was dismissed. I'm glad it was dismissed with prejudice. That's all appropriate. But I think that in a case like this, where you're bringing an obviously frivolous lawsuit to bear against a company, I think it's appropriate that some teeth be put in that judgment, and the group that brought that suit has to pay all legal fees and then some penalties.
I couldn't agree more, Phil.
I don't think it's enough just to dismiss the case, because Smith & Wesson, now they probably have a team of lawyers on retainer. If they don't, they're idiots. I mean, that's just smart business. But what I was told when I was in private sector management was they said, if you cause us to have to go in court to defend the company, even if we're innocent, it's going to cost us $8,000 just to get our lawyer into that courtroom. I don't know what Smith & Wesson's lawyers work for, but it ain't free. So that's the only thing I see missing from this is Primus Group should have the pantsuit off of them, and hopefully that'll be a deterrent to another miscellaneous shadow group using the legislative process like their own personal pit bull to deter them from doing this in the future. It's not enough to win this battle. Let's win them all.
Yep, Bloomberg. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Let's make stupid hurt.
I could not agree more. I wonder if they will go after him for legal fees, and I hope they do. And I hope that, I mean, this is clearly, the Primus Group is clearly a shell corporation. It's an LLC. They'll just shut down, and they did an LLC, so they would be protected from things like this, specifically so they could bring needs, specifically so they, even if they get damages awarded to someone else, they will never be able to collect on them. But they should do it. Shut them down. Make them work. Indiana gun store shuts down and has inventory seized by the ATF. This comes to us from Bearing Arms. The owners of G2 Sports Products and Indianapolis Gun Store have surrendered their FFL and had their inventory seized after a months-long investigation allegedly revealing multiple violations of the FFL law. It turns out, and they're done. They will not be able to reapply or engage in the business of dealing guns at all. So it's 390 firearms worth $224,000. And an indictment was filed against one of their employees, a man named Scott, who is a convicted felon. and did a lot of these sales to prohibited persons, was carrying a gun as a prohibited person, and kind of a bad dude, it seems. The owners are the ones who seem to be paying for this. The Scott individual will also be being dealt with, and it looks like they have a lot of evidence against him. But I know a lot of times we think that the ATF doesn't go after people who are abusing the law and using FFLs for evil and things like that. And I think this is a good case of them actually going after and enforcing the laws that are currently on the books, which I think is what we normally respectfully ask them to do. Phil, I want to start with you because I have a feeling that you're going to shut me down here.
My personal thoughts on gun laws are well known and well documented.
They are.
I'm sure are not going to come as a surprise to you, which is why you invite me on the show whenever you want to see my blood pressure go up.
Mm-hmm.
I don't agree with the idea on the basis that I don't like the idea that somebody's prohibited from selling property. I don't like the idea that felons can't own or carry or any otherwise exercise property rights or their Second Amendment rights. I don't like that idea. However, if you're going to do something illegal, don't do it publicly with a paper trail, you bunch of idiots.
No doubt.
It's the same. Look, it's the same thing that me and Zane talked about, like a month ago on your show it's like, we don't agree with the law, but if you're going to break it, do it quietly. Like sell guns out of a trunk. Not that I'd advocate somebody break the law like that, but damn sure don't do it with an FFL with a paper trail. Come on, guys. Be smart about being stupid.
There you go. Tim?
Yeah, Phil, I agree with everything you said in regards to property and whatnot. But what something that the article came in and Sean mentioned was that oftentimes people say the ATF has no teeth and we need to give them more teeth and they're not capable of doing these things. With the understanding of property rights, and I agree with you on there, but like you just said, no, they actually do have the ability to do it and they are doing it. And if that is the laws and this is what's going to happen and you're going to do stupid things and create a paper trail in doing it, there you go. And I think that sometimes when politicians make these, and in this day and age, it's just blanket statements. And if you keep repeating something, enough, it becomes a true thing. Well, no, the ATF in this case actually did something, and they're capable of doing it. And I think that, everyone might not be fans of the ATF for various reasons and property rights, but the ATF did their thing here.
Indeed. So we will see where that goes. I'm sure we'll hear about it. Supreme Court refuses to dismiss New York gun case. So basically, New York has laws that say if you have a firearm, if you have the extreme privilege in New York of having a firearm, that you can only take it to certain places, which are specific gun ranges. You can't leave the state with your firearms. You can't take them to the grocery store. You can't do anything else. You could drive it to specific ranges or any other places that are allowed by New York law, which is very few. The New York State Rifle Pistol Association brought suit against the state of New York specifically for this and say that it's infringing on their civil liberties. And I completely 100% agree on that. New York said, whatever. And then it started to not go New York State's way. And what happened then is they said, well, we're going to change the law and we're going to petition the court to basically say that this is moot. The case doesn't matter because we've changed the rules. So now the rules are a little bit better and people can take them out of state and to other gun ranges and things like that. And gladly, the Supreme Court came back and said, look, no, absolutely. Nope. We're going to go to oral arguments on this case. And we don't care if you change the rules because you could just change them back later. And I think this is a fantastic thing. Tim Knight?
Yeah, it is a fantastic thing. And, good on the folks in New York. The New York folks up there have done an amazing job because the advocates on the pro side of this, of the infringement of rights, I should say, called the state of New York. Initially, you had a permit. You could only take it to one of 7 ranges in the city. And then between there and your house. And like you said, Sean, they changed it so you could take it to a vacation home and out of state to certain things. But I think everyone sees what the state of New York's going to do. As soon as this case goes away, the state of New York's just going to change it back. Seems to have been the talk for a while. And I think the judges are smart to listen to this because they see this happening elsewhere. And perhaps it is an overreach, obviously. This is kind of pushing new territory. I mean, there's another case listed in another article here, but I think this is where the Supreme Court is really putting down their feet and saying, you know what, we're actually going to do our job. You guys can threaten us and not like what we're going to do, but I'm thankful, hopefully, that we're going to stick to the Constitution. And this gives me hope.
Yeah, completely agree. Now, a little bit more information is 4 Democratic senators filed an amicus curiae, which is a friend of the court brief, saying that the court is not well, and said that if you don't dismiss this case, you could face public backlash. And 53 Republican senators sent a letter to the clerk of the court saying, don't cower. This is an attempt to intimidate you. Phil, what are your thoughts on this whole thing? As time will allow.
The only two we don't have all night. The only two things that come to my mind are, first of all, how many years did New York citizens have to bow underneath this tyranny before they finally got their day in court? And the state of New York's answer is, well, we changed the rules, so it doesn't matter anymore. It's like, no. I think they're right to move this forward, and they're right to have a judgment, have oral arguments, because quite frankly, injury's already been done. A right delayed is a right denied, period, in discussion. So if it is not moot because it was inflicted upon these citizens and it deserves to have its day in court. The law deserves to have its day in court. That said, I very often get crossways with people because I call out some of the conservative darlings, things like Scalia. And my big issue is, there is a way to fix this whole problem. There's always been a way to fix this whole problem. All these little incremental laws and all these little bitty infringements, and there's a way to fix this problem. What the Supreme Court needs to do is put their foot down and say that the Second Amendment is, and always has been and always will be, the uninfringible, unabridgable right it was always meant to be, an individual right to keep and bear arms, free from government interference, period, in discussion, and seal it off. If they do that, this law won't matter. All these other laws won't matter. They can wipe the board of gun control in an instant. But until they do that, I just call this bouncing the needle back and forth. The other side bounces the needle a little bit this direction, and then the Supreme Court bounces a little bit back the other direction, but we're not making headway. So that's my only criticism. This is encouraging, but if the Supreme Court does if they truly want to abide by the will of the Constitution, if they truly want to uphold the Constitution as it was written, then they will come out and say you cannot tell people where they can take their firearms, how they can carry them, what they can own, period, in discussion. New York, here's your ball, go home.
Yeah, this is what shall not infringe means, folks, period, end of statement.
Yeah.
That's what should happen.
And if I have to bust out a copy of Webster's dictionary on somebody so they understand what the word infringe means, it means to limit, to abridge. There's a whole bunch of synonyms for it. But what it boils down to is you can't fool with it. Leave it alone.
Yep.
Yes.
That's why Sean brings me on the show. Just get me spun up about gun control and make me have a meltdown.
Having back lots.
Absolutely, yes. Because I love the passion and agree with you.
Yeah.
As semi-auto ownership continues to climb, crime continues to drop, and crime continues to decline despite higher number of CCW holders. The Uniform Crime Report came out from the FBI for 2018 and it had a very amazing treasure trove of data in it. You know how many people died from rifles in 2018? 197 is the number. More people died from hammers, knives, drownings, clearly smoking and cancer and such
diabetes, high cholesterol, heart disease. I mean,
drunk drivers, distracted drivers.
High fructose corn syrup kills more people in this country every year than rifles do.
Yes, 100.
That one on for size.
That number. So when you see the news and you hear the news talking about it's the dilemma of our time and it's the future of our children, I say bull crap. It's ridiculous. 197 in 2018, but more people own semi-auto guns than ever before. Crime drops. More people have concealed carry permits. Crime drops. So clearly, these numbers show it. We won't see these numbers in mainstream media. We absolutely will not. But the numbers are out there, distributed by the FBI. It's good data, and it's from a trustworthy source that probably isn't necessarily for the Second Amendment or firearms owners in general. It's just a report with the data, and they show that data. Either one of you, I don't care who wants to start.
Was that the Russian FBI or our FBI that put out these statistics?
It was our FBI, the United States of America's Federal Bureau of Investigation.
I have to ask because somebody's going to throw that in the hat. They always do. Anything they don't like is Russian.
It must be.
Or Ukrainian now. That's kind of Russian.
Yeah.
According to not me, I have a map.
Yeah. But You know, the only thing that I have to point out at a moment like this, because I like to be the doubting Thomas, is, you know, correlation does not equal causation. We cannot conclusively say those statistics are directly linked to a higher ownership of semi-automatic firearms and CCW permits. However, we can pretty easily establish that if more guns cause more deaths, that doesn't jive well with what we're seeing here. So it's like, I can't tell you for sure that more people carrying guns to protect themselves means less crime, but I can say more CCW holders does not mean more blood in the streets.
Yes.
We can disprove that one.
Yeah, 100%. And again, correlation and causation, totally 100% agree. I'm just, you know, people say, oh, well, people are buying more guns than ever before. It's a bloodbath in the streets. And it's just, it's not true. I don't know what the reason is. It's just that assertion is not true.
Look, we live in the safest times that, I mean, I'm 30, I just turned 37 the other day. So, I mean, I'm not that old. But, I mean, we live in the safest time of most people's lives. Call it what it is. I mean, crime has been steadily decreasing since the freaking 1980s. You are more likely to reach old age and never once have a firearm discharged at you in anger in life than ever in the history of the United States in the last 35 years.
Ownership of guns is up, and clearly people are being responsible with them. We know this. We do know this. You know, the second article that had the picture of John Lawn in it by the AmmoLand article, CCW spikes upwards in violent crime decline. If I jump, Sean, I'm sorry.
No.
Where it talked about 1.4 million people going up. The thing that I thought was interesting, and it doesn't necessarily correlate to any of that math, but was that 13 states now have more than 10% of the adult population who have carry permits. And I was like looking at the states. Go Colorado, by the way.
I know. I'm so excited you brought this up because I was going to as well. It's amazing. Why don't you read off those states that have more than 10% of the adult population that have concealed carry permits?
There's Alabama, Colorado, Florida, Georgia, Indiana, Iowa, Kentucky, Pennsylvania, South Carolina, South Dakota, Tennessee, Utah, and Washington. And some of those states have been trending politically, I would say, away from and against gun owners, but yet gun owners are continuing to apply for permits, or people are still seeing the use of, hey, I want to be responsible. I want to, you know, I realize that 911 may be minutes away when I need it now, and they're taking responsibility, even in environments where that's politically, so the politicians say, not what people want. Clearly it is.
Yeah, Washington surprises me. I mean,
yeah, that was the biggest.
We were just there.
Here's one thing, and this is something y'all might be able to help me out with. How many of those states have a prohibition or do not otherwise have a constitutional backing for open carry? In other words, like, how many of those states do you have to get a concealed carry permit or you cannot carry a firearm?
Tennessee does not have, it has one permit, and it is for carry, whether it be open or concealed.
But I guess my point is that how many of those states do you have the option to carry a firearm without having a permit? Because like down here in Louisiana, I'm not entirely surprised to see my state not on that list, because even though we're a very pro-Second Amendment state down here, even though the large sections of the state are like extremely conservative pro-gun, it's an open carry state.
Right.
And I'm going to tell you that you don't have to get very far outside of the metro areas of Baton Rouge, New Orleans, and Shreveport, and it's commonplace to see people open carrying. Very common. So and because of that, there's fewer people that are willing to get concealed carry permits because they don't need it.
The only state I'm familiar with, like having lived there intimately, know that would be the case where open carry is very legal without a permit would be Colorado, where I know that you're in the backcountry, everyone has it. So that would be kind of an answer to your question. I don't want to say in other states I have an inkling, but I don't want to say because I might be wrong.
Yeah, that was like the only thing that jumped out of my mind was if that's skewing the data one way or the other.
Maybe,
by the same token, if you're in a constitutional carry state, no one's going to have a concealed carry permit, but everybody's probably got a gun.
Yeah, I mean, because you don't see states like Arizona, Alaska, Vermont, the states that are, have a deep history and tradition of carrying without a permit or having constitutional carry for sure. So, more good news, right? Other than I'm not a big fan of having a permit for a constitutional right, but that's a different story for a different time.
Yeah, right? we could hijack Sean's whole show, pat on the back about that one.
That's the after action.
Right. Exactly. Florida parents turned in their daughter when they discovered 24 pipe bombs. I am bringing this up because we talk on the show about a lot of things like this. We talk about Minority Report and pre-crime and things like that. This is a case where it did well. Parents, so apparently this girl had been that had the police called. Everything kind of was okay. She was obsessed with Columbine in Oklahoma, and when her parents discovered some things in her bedroom that they thought was a concern, they called the police. They found a significant amount of pipe bombs in her bedroom. She has been arrested, but they found 24 pipe bombs, smokeless pistol powder, fused material, 23 different knives, 2 hatchets, nunchucks, 2 BB pellet type rifles. Don't care about that. 6 BB pellet type handguns, dozens of books and DVDs about murder, mass killing, bomb making, and domestic terrorism. The only thing I really am concerned with in that list is, really the pipe bombs and the smokeless powder and things like that. But I mean, this is a time where it looks like she was going to do something really bad. The parents were obviously present and observed it. They called the police, and this girl's life is going to change drastically. On the one hand, I think this is a good example of parents being involved and getting authorities involved, and the authorities hopefully doing the right things. But Tim, what do you think here?
Sean, that's it. It being a parent, that can't be an easy call to make. But it has to. I'd have a hard time living with myself if I knew that I didn't do something, or at least contribute to saying something or actively getting involved to make sure something didn't happen, because then that's kind of on me. And in the past, I've heard stories about what happened at Columbine, and the parents did or didn't say anything, and you have to live with yourself. And this must have been a tough call. I mean, clearly police had replied before they said, and this is actually another conversation we probably should have later. But it's taking notes, police officers taking notes on somebody, and then going back and saying, "Oh, this was a thing before, or it was a concern before." Okay, danger maybe, but I mean, ultimately, tough call, parents. But you did the right thing.
Yeah, Bill.
Yeah, the pipe. I'm with you, Sean. The pipe bombs are the only thing here that really cocks my eyebrow, because nothing else there is illegal.
Nope.
Not even the smokeless powder. I mean, I'm not encouraging somebody to red flag me, but needless to say, I reload my own ammo, and I have enough smokeless powder on hand to frighten most people. Perfectly legal, by the way. Hallelujah.
It is.
But the only thing about this article that hasn't been brought up that really kind of shot my eyebrows up was about halfway down. The only other time deputies responded to the Wimoma home was in August 2018, after an online printing company alerted them that cults requested several manifests on anarchists and making bombs.
Yeah.
That concerns me slightly, because I think back to myself when I was a young, inquisitive person, 2 decades ago now. And I Googled some really interesting off the beaten path things, let's say. I was very, very, very curious. And I just think to myself, I'm like, me then jettisoned into this current time with the surveillance state that we have to live under, I would have to have a conversation with a young me about a virtual private network and a Tor browser, so I don't get my parents' front door kicked in.
True.
Yeah, they're watching us now.
Oh, absolutely are. I mean, look, if you are pro Second Amendment under your real identity, you're on about 3 different watch lists. I'm on there with you, so you're in good company.
I'm on all the lists.
Tony Simon says snitching ass publishing company, which is true.
Tony's here to help.
That's wonderful. It's true though. California governor doubles down on Gunmageddon. So what's his name? Gavin Newsom, something like that. He just signed a week ago, I believe, signed a bunch of new stuff into laws, and here it is. So prohibiting Californians from buying more than 1 semi-automatic rifle per month. Bans the sale of semi-automatic centerfire rifles to people under the age of 21, which removed a provision that allowed people to do it for hunting reasons. And let's see, increased the red flag laws to where it didn't have to just be family members or whatever. Now it can be teachers, school administrators, employers, and coworkers that can red flag people there and petition courts to remove guns without due process. Let's see. I know there's more. Let's just say that there's a whole lot of dumb stuff. Oh yeah. Another one, which AB 893, which bans gun shows from taking place at the state-owned Del Mar Fairgrounds. That's definitely going to get challenged by Second Amendment groups, 100%. And let's see, expands length of time that the gun violence restraining orders remain in effect from 1 year to 5 years. So without due process, you can have your firearms removed from you for up to 5 years. Another one is all precursor parts sold in the state need to be through a licensed precursor parts dealer. So you want to upgrade your trigger? Boom. Background check, fees, all that other stuff. You want to replace your barrel? Boom. Background check, fees, all that other stuff. Just like the ammunition background checks, which has resulted in tons of false positives and has really infringed on Californians' ability to exercise their Second Amendment rights. Just a disaster. Tim?
Sean, I don't even know really where to start here because I know tons of great people, friends of mine, friends of yours, friends of all of us probably. I grew up in California. I'm from there. This is this is a test bed for absolutely where bad ideas start. New Jersey, sorry, Tony, is also one of them, and so is Massachusetts. This is just a basket of infringement. I don't even, I mean, I looked at that. I just read the article and shook my head. I read it earlier when it came out, and I was just like, precursor parts dealers, please, come on. And then we're gonna find out that they're not being tough on criminals in California, but yet people who go through background checks and you get tons of false positives because somebody didn't click their seatbelt and got pulled over by a police officer. All of a sudden, they're getting in trouble. Who do the politicians work for? And here's the funny part. And I know this isn't in the article, but I believe that most of the California legislature has exempted themselves from all this, and they all have concealed carry permits and all these things. Yeah, special class of people.
Really?
Yeah. Surprise. This is a warning and a very unfortunate thing. This is a warning to everyone else. All of the bad ideas. It says, it talked about one of the legislators in here who wrote this. He didn't write this. Somebody gave it to him and said, you take this and run this piece of legislation. They hand out little bits like, oh, you want some kudos back home, say you did something, hand in this legislation and say you wrote it. You didn't write that. They have no idea what they're doing. And what they're doing, again, is to people who've done nothing wrong for the most part. You're punishing people and you're just trying to infringe so much that people stop using and participating in these rights. That's ultimately the idea. They're killing the fish by turning up the water in the pot, or the frog. All the critters in the pot.
All of them.
All the critters. And this California is infringement. And, there's that bumper sticker that I have on the side of my safe that says, that the Constitution is the supreme law of the land except prohibited by law. California is like racing to outdo New Jersey and Massachusetts and Illinois. And they're in this dash to who can double down and triple down on stupid and just rip rights away from people with no concern for the actual people themselves. And then they let criminals off and they plea bargain things away. Yeah, I'm going to get foamy at the mouth. I should stop.
Phil?
I do have to disagree with Tim about one thing. I see. Here's the thing that a lot of people I don't think give enough credence to, and this I am going to break one of my own cardinal rules. I don't like to ascribe motive to action, but when it comes to anti-gunners, I tend to. Forgive me, but in the mind of the people who are advocating this type of legislative action and passing it and supporting it, we have absolutely done something wrong. You see, the state has made it abundantly clear we are not supposed to have guns, and we continue to do so against their wishes. So we have done something wrong just by having guns, by daring to exercise our rights, by insisting that we should have these rights and not have them infringed upon by government, by finding all these little loopholes in the bullet buttons and 10,000 other little ways to skirt around all the ridiculous junk that they're throwing at us. Sean doesn't let me curse on a show. I'm trying to be good.
Whoa, hold on a second.
That's the other show.
Not me. That's Kenny. No, that's iTunes. That's
YouTube.
Problem. If you've heard my other show, I heard like ridiculous.
I'm trying to behave myself. Don't encourage me. But like I said, I think we have done something wrong. You see, we have disobeyed our masters and not been obedient children by owning guns. So we have done something wrong, and we deserve whatever penalty they see fit to bestow upon us for their trouble that we've caused them. That said, the same conversation we had earlier about frivolous lawsuits and how I do wish that legislative action had teeth. It's going to take a concerted effort by hundreds, if not thousands, of California citizens and lots of special interest groups, the ACLU being one of many, to try to undo and fight against all this. And we're going to do it with our individual money and dollars and donations and time. And in return, the state is going to fight us tooth and nail to try to keep the stranglehold on. And they're going to use tax dollars extorted from us to fund their war chest to freaking do it.
Yep.
And that is my one issue with this whole situation. This is why I get really fired up and frustrated whenever somebody talks about take it to court, legislative action, blah, 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 blah. The problem is we're not winning anything. We're using our money and they're using our money.
You're paying.
We're using our time and they're using our time. The government has limitless resources to push their agenda and ram it down our throats, and we have limited resources to fight against it. So my issue is when Gavin Newsom, win or lose in court, his policies be damned, he will exit out of the public eye with nothing to show, with no marks on his record or his hide for signing this into law. And that's my issue with this.
And it'll be
I
him and
think-
politicians.
Exactly.
Citizens.
You want to know what make this foaming at the mouth fundamentalist really happy? Politicians and legislators out there, you put your name on a freaking document that's later found to be unconstitutional against state at the state or federal level, you get to answer for it in court personally. You get your own money taken from you. You get your own freedom and your own time taken from you, the same way you took from all those citizens. You sign your name on the dotted line, your ass goes to prison.
No special people here.
No.
Yep.
No. See, here's the thing. I do agree that there should be special people in special classes, but my version of special means you have more responsibility heaped on you.
Yeah. Yep.
If you're an elected official, you are elected on the trust of the people who put you in office, and you have an obligation not to screw the people who sent you there.
Huh.
And if you do, then your hide goes on the wall. No second chances. No, oh, I thought I was doing the right thing, or I misunderstood. Bull. If you don't know if it's constitutional, it probably isn't, and you ought to keep your signature off of it.
Yep.
And by the way, because this is where I usually exit stage left after dropping the mic, but 200 something years ago, that's exactly how things got done in this freaking country. When politicians did stuff they weren't supposed to, people with pitchforks and torches pulled them out of office, by their toes. And there were consequences for abusing the citizenry.
Yes, and it would be cool if more
Gives me a warm feeling. Just
what he's telling you to do is vote.
I think I got chills at some point during that.
That was
Oh,
me.
look,
Engagement. Come on, folks.
at this point, if I thought voting worked, I'd go do it twice, like most other Democrats do.
For one thing at a time. Okay.
But I don't think voting works at this point. I mean, if you vote for one scumbag or the other, they're both going to run on whatever platform gets them elected. They're going to go to office and they're going to do what they want to do, regardless of what they promised to do.
And we will disagree on that one. But I see your point.
I'm a cynic by my nature. I want to be proven wrong.
You be you, boo.
All right, guys. So the ACLU has weighed in on Gavin Newsom's assault on the Second Amendment, and I think it may surprise you. They disagree with it. They actually say that this continue. Let's see. I'm sorry. That's what Gavin Newsom said. Let's see. They say that the law currently allows law enforcement family members of troubled individuals to ask the courts, blah, blah, blah. We know that. Yeah, where is it? The ACLU basically said it's too far. It's too much, and it can be abused without question, to paraphrase. And I am 100% in agreement with them. The ACLU doesn't often come down on the side of freedom as relates to the Second Amendment, but on this case in California and Gavin Newsom's assault, they've come down and said that he is wrong. And I think that's pretty huge. I mean, when the ACLU is coming down on the side of freedom and the Second Amendment, even if they're not saying that, that's really what they're doing. Tim, what do you think?
Well, to quote in the article, they're not wrong. It's good to see the American Civil Liberties Union sticking up for an over-infringement of a civil liberty. Yay. I don't really have, yay, keep going. Let's see where this goes. I'm sure that was an argument at a meeting and they're like, nah, I don't know, and someone said it's too far. Okay, well, I'm glad that there's the engagement of too far. That's good. I mean, we're talking about groups being engaged. I remember when the ACLU took the side of the NRA a while back on a particular thing for the state of New York. I'm sure there was a conversation in that room is like, is this really what we want to do? Perhaps it's too far. Okay, good. Maybe other people besides citizens, groups and organizations that say they're for civil liberties and others and other groups, and there are many of them. Keep doing it. I'm glad to see this. So I'm just going to go back to they're not wrong. So tag Phil. Here, tag Phil.
Tag him in. Right over here.
First of all, I'm a little beside myself that I have to agree with the ACLU. This is twice in my lifetime, which is 3 more times than I thought I ever would agree with the ACLU. I'm going to steal the line right out of the article. Intellectual integrity won the day. Hallelujah. See, I don't have to agree with everything that a group or a person espouses as long as I see some kind of intellectual consistency. And I can say, I disagree with you, but I see how you got there. But I guess my point of view is that if you are the ACLU and your mission statement is to defend civil liberties, then you have to defend the Second freaking Amendment. You just have to. I mean, it's right there, Second Amendment, right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, applies equally to all Americans, regardless of the race, creed, color, sex, or gender. All 57 of them these days. So, I mean, I'm kind of proud of them, and I don't know where else to go from here. I'm shocked.
The civil liberties thing, because it's great they're doing it. And someone asked me the other day, because it's complicated to give an answer as to what Tim actually does. But yesterday I replied, I work in civil rights. What does that mean? I said, the Second Amendment. Like, that's not a civil right. I'm like, really? It's in the Constitution. They're like, oh, I hadn't thought about that. I'm like, well, welcome. And I gave him a copy of the Constitution because I would have one on me. But yeah, I mean, hello, knock, knock. Yeah, I'm a civil rights guy. And they're like, really? Not what but it should be.
No, and see, I'm going to steal the line from many other people who are much more prolific than I am. But the Second Amendment is the original equal right. It makes everyone equal. My wife cannot be expected to fight off a 245-pound Army vet like myself barehanded, but put a 9mm shield in that little lady's hands, and she has the exact same ability to defend herself I do.
Yep.
Whether you are 300 pounds of solid muscle or 120 pounds soaking wet, male, female, or other, regardless of your race, your religion, your political convictions, or anything else, the Second Amendment applies to everyone equally and gives everyone the same equal ability to defend their life and their property and their homes and their families and their loved ones. Yep. So if we cannot all agree that the Second Amendment is an absolutely awesome equal right, I don't know where else. We don't have common ground at that point.
You have education to do, clearly. But yes.
Yep. All right. So this one is kind of a long, I don't want to spend a ton of time on it, but I think it is an important story. This comes to us October 11th from CNN.com. Feds cut a deal with a legal arms maker to avoid case law that would go against gun control. And I'm going to try to summarize this to the best that I can. There was an individual, a man, that was basically running build parties where he had a CNC and people would come and they would pay him a specific amount of money. And they would put the they would put the lower.
It went on for more than a year, captured in these undercover.
I didn't do it.
Damn autoplay.
For a year. This show has not been that long, Sean.
Talking. I don't. No, apparently I had CNN unmuted. Problem solved. He was running the build parties, and he would come in and he would show you how to put the receiver into the jig or whatever it happened to be, and then he would show you to press the green button. And you press the green button, and it mills out this 80% lower receiver. And because you did it, it was expected that it would be manufactured by you. It turns out that's not really the case. Anyway, he got arrested and taken to court by the ATF, and there was an interesting portion of this where a U.S. District Court judge basically said he put forth something in this case that said, well, according to the actual law, it talks about uppers and breech blocks and barrels and things like that, that an AR-15 lower receiver isn't actually covered by any of the existing laws. And again, I'm paraphrasing. This is a huge, very complex thing. I'm just trying to kind of break it down very simply. And that would have opened a huge loophole in this federal law because the AR-15 lower doesn't actually meet what is actually set forth in the laws of the country as to what a firearm is and things like that. And because of this, the federal government basically came back and let him off. They dropped the charges because they weren't willing to let it go to court because it may turn out that AR-15s were not covered by this. And again, I'm simplifying it so much. I want you all to go to read this story. It's CNN.com. It'll be in the show notes, but if you just search for "he sold illegal AR-15s," you'll find it. And basically they just dropped the charges because it would have changed things drastically. And very, very interesting. I have said on another show that I think this is the worst thing that could possibly happen, right? Because it's not going to court. It's not going to become precedent. It's not going to become case law. It's awful. I'm glad for him that they dropped it, but it's kind of terrible, ultimately, because it's not going to go to court. But now that we know that this is out here, I think that other people will try to use this defense if they get into trouble and things like that. And man, it's a big, long, drawn out story. I've read it a couple different times trying to come to terms with all the intricacies and nuance of the story. But Tim, are you familiar with this? What do you think?
Yeah, not only did I hear you guys talk about it the other day, which was always entertaining, and entertaining. You should check that out. I got a couple of things from this. A couple people were known felons that were producing them, so they ended up with that. Possession of parts, that's a sticky wicket. I don't know. The thing that there's so much here, Sean. I mean, we could really do a show on just this.
Totally agree.
The thing that I will focus on here is that the Justice Department was very much involved from the Attorney General on down, basically saying, leave this one alone. We're not prepared to go here. We can't do it because it's too much. Folks, that's really all I'm going to do from that, because Phil could probably go point by point when I'd love to do that, and I want to do that actually. Phil, let's write about this one. But I think the Justice Department here saw this as a serious problem they did not know how to handle, and they didn't expect the judge would dig in like that. Mm-hmm. Build parties though, it's a thing.
Yeah, it kind of blew me away. I was like, wow, I heard about this maybe last week, a week before, and I had to read this article several different times and look up a couple things, but it is very, very many faceted and leveled. Phil?
My own mistrust of our legislative process and our own government should be well documented at this point, so I don't have to put my tinfoil hat on for this one.
You don't.
But it's moments like this where I look around, I look at everybody else in the room, and I'm like, does anybody here still want to question whether or not the state is wholly committed to pursuing an agenda? Because if normal people are trying to seek truth or trying to figure something out, they follow the data to its conclusion. And this would be an opportunity to examine these firearm laws and determine, are they being correctly applied? Are they correctly written? And challenge this head on. However, when the state's response is, we don't like this because it shakes things up, they are not committed nor interested in trying to determine if they are screwing the citizenry of this country. They don't care.
Nope.
What they really want is to maintain the status quo, because it justifies a very large, very bloated federal government and lots of three-letter agencies that shouldn't constitutionally exist, because they do things that are not constitutional. And if that is open for debate after y'all read this story, y'all need to have a talk with me, because I don't know where I lost y'all.
You didn't lose. Yeah.
You two know, but somebody out there missed the crazy train.
No, you got it. You got it. I mean, folks, grab a copy of the Constitution. There are a lot of agencies there that just don't belong because they're not in the document. Those belong to the states, and we shouldn't be doing this.
There's some debate about whether or not even the states have a right to
I get it. It's crossing lines and it's other. But
ATF should be a convenience store. No truer words have ever been spoken to me in my life.
So agree.
But at the end of the day, like that's my one biggest frustration about this whole thing, is that this was a perfect opportunity if we really wanted to determine, are the laws correct? And for anybody that says the laws are always correct, frankly, crack a history book. The law has been wrong dozens of times in the last 200 years. It was once lawful to deny people who were female and African American the right to vote.
Yeah.
That was lawful, by the way. The law said that was correct. But if you're going to tell me today in 2019 that the law is always right, you have to go back into that history book and tell me all those laws are right too. Yep. And if those laws weren't right, these may not be right either. And if you can make both of those points pass each other without hitting each other, intellectual consistency and you just don't match up well.
No, that's a citizen versus a subject. Unfortunately, I think it's skewing in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
Nathan brought up a good point in the comments on YouTube about Kamala Harris was the attorney general when this all happened and went down. When he was arrested, when it went to trial, when it went to everything. So,
Sean, I lent my tinfoil hat to Zane. We can't go down this road right now. I can't do without my tinfoil hat.
yes, I love it. Hey, Fort Worth police officer kills woman in her own home while conducting a welfare check. Holy moly! So, we talk about stories like this, and look, sometimes we talk about
tonight in a bucket of outrage.
Okay, all of the autoplay tonight. WFAA.com. We talk about stories like this all the time. Sometimes I side on the officer that they have incredible amounts of stress. And I mean, you're going to a place that you don't know what's going on. You've been called out. Other times I side on the side of innocent people who are killed. And this comes to us from Fort Worth, Texas. And I mean, this is just like a week after the Amber lady got convicted of murder. And so what happened is a neighbor called and said, hey, my neighbors across the street, their door's been open since 10 o'clock. It's now 2 a.m. The door's wide open. The lights are on. I don't know if anything's wrong. Maybe you could send an officer to check it out. Officer shows up. Officer looks in the front door, doesn't knock, doesn't ring the doorbell, starts walking around the side of the house, opens the gate. He's got his flashlight on. He gets to the rear of the house, starts shining his flashlight through a window. You hear him say something along the lines of put the gun down or put it down, whatever. Doesn't identify himself as a police officer. Fires a shot, kills a woman who was just in her own house playing video games with her nephew at 2 o'clock in the morning. She heard somebody in the backyard, got her firearm, went to look out the window to see what was going on, and she's dead because of it. The officer has now been arrested for murder. And man, this is it's a really tough story. The video is out there. The body cam footage is out there. The police chief said he resigned, but I would have fired him. He is going to be charged with murder. He is going to go to trial with murder. And from my perspective, looking at it, understanding the job of policemen, understanding the incredible things that they have to deal with on a daily basis. Holy moly, this is a tough one. Phil?
You know, the one thing that's been intoned to me by a lot of people from a lot of different walks of life, and it's something that I've kind of taken up as my own mantle to try to preach people, is when the only thing you carry is a hammer, everything starts to look like a nail. And I think that's something very important to bring up at a moment like this, because it applies very equally to concealed carriers and your average citizen as it does to police officers. When the only tool you carry is a hammer, everything starts to look like a nail. When we have spring-loaded our law enforcement community to the kill and fight position through their training and through their conditioning, it's not a huge surprise this kind of thing starts to happen. It's also not a huge surprise that the media loves to take and fan the flames on something like this. So even if it only happened once every now and then, we'll hear about it for the next 3 or 4 weeks nonstop. So it's in our minds, psychologically, it seems like it happens all the time regardless. But, that's the only thing that really concerns me about a situation like this. You have a woman in her home. She hears someone in the backyard. And this is the second time in the last couple of months we've had a situation like this with a law enforcement officer that did not identify themselves to the homeowner, did not shout police, did not have the car, did not have their cruiser out front with blues and twos running, gave no indication to the people inside law enforcement is outside. And when they encountered a homeowner with a firearm defending their property, they shot and killed a person. That's been twice that's happened in the last several months. And the definition of insanity is when you do the same thing more than once and you expect a different result. Well, the law enforcement community, out there, listen to me. If you are dealing with a person who even might be a homeowner defending their own property because they don't know who the hell you are, you can expect them to be armed, and you can expect them to probably not be happy that you're in their backyard. Because if somebody was wandering around in my backyard in the dark and I didn't think they were law enforcement, I'd be out there with a 9mm wanting to know who the hell it was and what they were doing. So I'm well within my rights to defend my property. It has to come down to law enforcement to understand that it is their duty to make themselves known, that they are law enforcement, that they are looking to conduct a welfare check. They have to get it out of their heads that they can sneak around somebody's house and try to play by their own rules. They are dealing with a person who is exercising eminent domain over their own property, who has a right to be there and defend it. And if you want to encroach upon their property, even in the commission of your duties, it's on you to tread lightly.
Tim Knight?
It has to be that way.
You know what? He covered it all. It's a tragic thing. I understand it's not an easy job. I get that. This is a tragedy for sure. And I'm just going to boil this and add to it because it was implied. This comes down to training. It has to be training. You have to follow procedure, whether you be a civilian or be law enforcement. You have to do that. I understand sometimes it's not the easy thing to do. I get it. But this is how people get dead. And this is very sad. Very sad.
And it's not just true. Well, you could also lump this in with training, but it's a sociological change that has to happen. We have got to get our law enforcement community to stop approaching people as potential targets and begin to look at them as people. When you're in somebody's backyard unannounced and you see a person holding a gun, newsflash, you're the intruder. You wouldn't be the intruder if you had announced yourself to that homeowner and let them know, I'm in your backyard, I'm law enforcement, I am your local sheriff, whoever.
Agree.
You are the intruder when you intrude upon a person's property, whether you're law enforcement or not. You are the intruder. You do not have the unlimited right to traipse where you please, when you please, and expect the rest of the world and property owners to move around you. They have a right to defend their property. They have a right to know who's on their property. So I got a lot of friends and family with law enforcement, and I understand the job they do better than most because I hear about it firsthand. But when you inject yourself into someone's domain, you have to tread lightly.
Yep.
And when you don't, people get dead.
Yeah, and I noticed Kenny added a story after I went through the stories, which is another very related one. It happened here today in Aurora, Colorado, 70 miles north of me, 80 miles north of me, whatever. Guy calls cops earlier in the day because he's having the civil dispute with his former roommate. Everything went totally fine. They were worried about the guy who had come by the house earlier. A cop shows up for some reason and the exact same thing. He is inside the house with his girlfriend and their 3-year-old girl. Hears something outside, grabs a shotgun in case it's the former roommate trying to break in or something like that, turns away from the window, and an officer suddenly fires into the house, hitting him in the back. So, I mean, man, this is a tough one. This actually came out October 16th. This happened on October 10th.
Just something to address for sure. I mean, press the repeat button on what Phil just said. I mean,
exact same thing. Yeah, exact same thing. Oh man, that's an interesting one. Here's one. I don't want to talk for a long time, so I'm basically going to read 3 headlines, and I want you guys to pick the ones you want to talk about. If you want to talk about all 3 of them, that's totally good. A retired cop has gun seized for pointing out lack of school security. He went to a breakfast place and he was talking to his friends, and he sees the school resource officer over there, and he says, "Holy moly, this guy's over here sitting here, and instead of being there to protect the school, someone could just go shoot the school up." Waitress overhears him. Waitress calls the police. They red flag him. They take away his firearms without due process. And he has a lawyer and he's fighting back. I think that's a great thing. ABC gets caught using Knob Creek machine gun footage to portray the war in Syria. They say, look at this crazy footage of Turks killing Syrians. I don't even remember exactly what it is. But it turns out it's a machine gun shoot. Just people having fun and rocking and rolling with the Second Amendment in Knob Creek in Kentucky. And somehow ABC tried to pass that off. And I noticed that they used a word, appears to be, in the news report, but they got called out for that. Eagle-eyed person on Reddit caught them for that. And NRA Carry Guard leaves their policy holders unprotected. They canceled all the policies. And so now people that were paying for that insurance no longer have that insurance. Very, very interesting there. Tim, start with you. Any thoughts on those 3 stories?
The Carry Guard thing is unfortunate. I hope that people seek additional coverage. I have second call defense. I just can say that, but it's just me. Good folks and a sponsor of this show.
Yep, absolutely. Firearmsradio.tv/SCD to find out more.
The crossing guard thing in Massachusetts was concerning. There's a conversation overheard. I've actually done security evaluations of schools with security teams, and we try and not share our conversations and whatnot. But he was making a comment about the school resource officer being away for coffee and leaving the school, and he didn't think that was right. And the waitress overheard him, and all of a sudden they were showing up at his house and taking guns and not giving him receipts for that, and he has to fight to get his rights back, and and to get his job back because he lost his job. This is all concerning. This is another one of those, hey, if you see something, you say something, red flag law, getting carried too far things, folks. This is yet another example of maybe we actually need to stop and listen to things first and assess how, danger. I could go through each one of these stories, Sean, but I know we have time.
I know. I mean, I'm totally with you. I think the crossing guard thing is absolutely ridiculous and shows the danger of red flag laws. I think that carry guard, we're not surprised. It was a crappy policy put in place by, in my opinion, a horrible executive, Josh Powell, and ABC. I say on another show that mainstream media is the enemy. They have an agenda. They try to bend us to their agenda, and just more example of how terrible mainstream media is these days. Phil, I want to hear your thoughts.
I don't want to talk about ABC. My blood pressure's at a nice medium pace. I don't want to mess with that right now, and I really don't want to badmouth the NRA because, dadgummit, I do it enough. I'll give them a pass on this one. I don't know what else I could add to what y'all have already said about this third story, though. I mean, this is, except again, I ascribe motive to action in moments like this. I think this is absolutely a good look at what red flag laws are designed to do. What they're designed to do is to criminalize the act of firearm ownership and to open you up to enormous liability and harassment by the state. They're designed to alienate gun owners because if you say anything in front of the wrong person, they could turn you into the thought police and the Gestapo will come beat on your door and take all your rights. Yep. That's what they're designed to do. This is not a red flag laws. There's no good to be had because if you have a credible threat, if you committed a crime, if you've done something naughty, if you've been a bad boy, there's already plenty of legal avenues out there to take you into custody, take your firearms, and put you in a white padded room till we can verify you're not going to hurt yourself. What red flag laws are is giving the state a blank check to criminalize gun ownership and use your neighbors, by the way, to enforce their bidding.
Yeah.
Stasi stuff, East German.
Exactly.
A waitress at a restaurant, and I'm not impugning waitresses. I'm saying she had a fleeting listen of what they were talking about and absolutely no context to the statement made. Ridiculous. Stupid. Yeah. She should be ashamed.
She may not be, but here's the thing of it. If she is ashamed of herself, the damage is already done. And if she's not ashamed of herself, that's worse.
Yeah.
Because she's taken this gentleman who apparently didn't intend to hurt anybody and just wrecked his immediate life because she thought she heard something.
Yeah.
And so I've had this conversation with friends of mine that are much closer to the center on gun rights than I am. I admit wholeheartedly, I am hardcore, hard right fundamentalist. That's my bend. I think there are no gun laws necessary after the Second Amendment. We're good with that one. Rocket launchers for everybody, crew serve weapons for home defense. I'm that guy that scares other gun owners. But that said, I talk to friends of mine that are much closer to the middle than I am, and they ask me, what is your issue with red flag laws? And when I explain to them this, I'm like, okay, let's say hypothetically, you are much closer to me on gun rights than ostensibly people you know. People of a certain political persuasion tend to run in herds. So this friend of mine votes Democrat, has his entire life, very, very heck of a nice guy and another military veteran, but politically, we don't match up on everything, but he's hardcore gun rights, oddly enough. And this is where we get crossways because he asked me, he's like, what's the issue with red flag laws? And my response was, imagine if you could go to a family cookout, you have terse words with a cousin of yours over bull, stuff that happens at family reunions. He knows you're a gun owner. He makes a phone call, and then 3 o'clock the next morning, the cops kick in your front door and take your guns. That's what red flag laws are an invitation to. It gives somebody else the ability to take your rights using the state and using the police force with no due process. That's my issue with them. This musing I keep hearing from certain politicians about, well, we want red flag laws as long as they're constitutional and have due process. There's no such freaking thing as due process and constitutional when it comes to red flag laws.
Second, that motion.
Yeah.
There's no such thing. And anybody that says there is, you need to come on my podcast where we have an hour to scream and yell at each other about it.
All right. I love it. Excellent analysis, my friends. Let's go ahead and start wrapping this up. But before we do, I always want to hear what you guys are up to. Phil, what are you up to? Where can people find you?
You can find the podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify. We're really big on Facebook, social media, Instagram. You can find us at mofpodcast.com. We actually just got through coming back for our annual trip up to Prepper Camp up in Saluda, North Carolina 2-3 weeks ago now. End of September. I don't know. It's been a whirlwind. But had a good time. Taught a class on how to reload your own ammunition, which was pretty well received. So we might have converted a few people to the black arts of reloading.
So good. That's awesome. You had fun though. I know that
I had a freaking blast. Like I tell people every year, I'm like, I go to Prepper Camp. The first year I went to Prepper Camp, I was like all in, taking classes and this, that, and the other. And now this is like my freaking social event for the year. I go up there and I meet people from my podcast, people from other podcasts, people I know through social media, through the pro Second Amendment space, through the prepper community that I don't see anywhere else because we're from all over the country. And then we spend our evenings cooking, smoking cigars, drinking booze, acting like freaking hooligans, trying to get kicked out of the campsite. It's a good time.
That's what I do at every event we go to, pretty much.
Neither confirm nor deny, but we can.
It's true. Tim knows. It's true. That's awesome. Phil, it's good to catch up with you, man. I'm super excited that Prepper Camp went awesome. And I want to have you on another show very, very soon. We've talked about it. I'm ready to. You were out of town or something. I think you were at Prepper Camp when I invited you.
Yeah, I think that is what happened. Yeah. I was either like I was either at Prepper Camp or I was on the way.
Yeah. All right. Very cool, man. It's awesome to catch up with you. Tim Knight, what you been up to? Where can people find you?
They can find me on the To the Republic .us. It's a new podcast I'm getting started up, doing some interviews with people getting interesting stuff done. Game changers, people starting companies and doing great stuff. I have a co-host, Rebecca Schmoy from 1 Million Moms Against Gun Control. And we're getting that started. We got a couple episodes under our belt. As a matter of fact, the Tony Simon episode drops tomorrow. We're pretty excited about that. I am headed to the U.S. Capitol for a Second Amendment rally on this 2nd of November. And I will actually be speaking. And I'm not a huge fan of my public speaking skills, but I'm going to go and stand with some good people and hopefully reach new people and inspire others, whether they be there or not, to make a difference. And you can learn more about that just by looking up secondamendmentrally.com.
Very, very cool. Tim, always a pleasure, sir.
Thank
Phil,
you.
Always a pleasure, sir. So glad to be back, bringing you guys the news of the day. And we'll be back. And a little surprise for you next week. Jake is going to host the show. I will be out of town in New Orleans. He's going to host the show going next week. It'll be next Thursday is when it's live and release shortly thereafter. I think that'll be fun. And thanks to everyone who works on the show to make it happen. And thanks to all of our listeners, 100%. Leave us some reviews. Check out Patriot Patch Company, patriotpatch.co, Second Call Defense at firearmsradio.tv/SCD. And we brought someone new on board as well. So This Week in Guns is produced by Kenny Ortega and Benjamin Allreed and is a production of the Firearms Radio Network. And guys, we are going to see you next week and every week after that. I promise. Here we go. We'll talk to you soon. Phil, you don't look happy anymore.
Dude, I just hate politicians these days.
Oh my God, I know.